Amandla awethu matla yaruna matimba aina all power siyabonga riyalebuka thank you very much comrades. National person, Comrade Balega Mbete, Deputy President, Comrade Cyril Ramaphosa, national officials, NEC members, leadership of the ANC Women's League, the ANC Youth League, the ANC Veterans League, leadership of the MKMVA, leadership of the Tripartite Alliance, COSATU, the SACP and SANCO, ANC provincial and regional leaders who are here, traditional leaders and religious leaders, representatives of the civil society and members of the mass democratic movement and fraternal organizations, comrade delegates from the branches, members of the basic unit of the ANC, the African National Congress. Good afternoon to you all, including our friends, the media. In Zulu, we would be saying, "Imedia iphume ngeenkani." Comrades, before I make my closing remarks, I would like to request all of us to rise and observe a moment of silence in honor of the 18 people who died in a bus crash in Mpumalanga and the 8 who died in yet another road crash outside Mangaung. Our thoughts, hearts, and prayers are with their families and relatives at this difficult moment. We also wish to convey our deep condolences to the families of the legendary jazz musician and teacher, Mr. Johnny Mekwa, as well as that of Michael Bizarre Dlamini, a football legend who both recently passed away. We also wish to send our deepest condolences to all families of the victims of the fire that broke out in central Johannesburg this morning, claiming the lives of 7 people. Thank you. You may be seated. Our hearts also go out to the hundreds of people of Imizamo Yethu community in Hot Bay in the Western Cape who were displaced by fire. We have accordingly instructed relevant national government ministries to work together with the City of Cape Town in dealing with the disaster and taking care of our people in distress. Comrades, let me take this opportunity first and foremost to thank all delegates who came from the length and breadth of our country to attend this historic 5th ANC National Policy Conference. You distinguished yourselves in our observation more than any other time. The quality of the discussion was very high. I can tell you, particularly when we listen to the youth, the young membership that is here, with vibrant debate, we felt at our age, because we are no longer young, that this ANC is going to remain in good hands. Your presence here has ensured that we together were part of shaping, sharpening, and deepening the policies of the ANC. But there is one point that has been proved, which I've been arguing for and getting defeated all the time in the argument. That less than a week for the ANC conference is too short. As a result, this time, because it was 1 week, only today, because we had to deal with matters in a particular way, delegates had enough time to express their views without a rule, 2 minutes, because it's cut. 1 week is good, not so. Shouldn't we make it a custom, SG? So that we can discuss issues and complete. I'm sure the NEC will agree. We also thank all alliance partners and the leagues of the ANC, as well as all progressive democratic formations who graced this conference with their presence. We express our sincere gratitude also to the stalwarts and veterans of our movement who attended this policy conference and participated in discussions from day one, despite the demands associated with their advanced age. Your presence reaffirms the fact that the ANC is still a people's movement, a broad church, and a true parliament of the people. You debated the matters that our people are eager about, not in secret, but in public. You briefed the nation through the media. Compatriots, I'm proud to report that this conference discussed all important issues facing the ANC and the country in a disciplined manner, befitting the stature of our movement as the leader of society. Everyone agrees that this policy conference has been a watershed in the arena of the Festival of Ideas. Different ideas were articulated and debated. Various formulations were presented and tested so that the movement can come out of this conference with a common perspective on all issues that were being deliberated upon. All delegates and participants were demonstrated, all delegates and participants here demonstrated deep understanding that the ANC plays a central role in the betterment of the lives of our people, and that the ANC still remains the strategic center of power. Comrades, we have come to the end of our 5th ANC National Policy Conference, which was both vibrant and robust in its deliberations. We can confidently declare that this was a very fruitful and successful policy conference. Comrades, it is not the intention of this address to go into a detailed account of outcomes of commissions. A full conference report will be sent to structures and also publicized. We say it was successful because the main objectives of the policy conference were achieved. We came here first and foremost to review the policies of the ANC and to assess whether we are still on course with the execution of the goals of the National Democratic Revolution. We came here to assess the work done since the last conference and also to make policy proposals where necessary to the upcoming 54th National Conference. All these tasks were done remarkably well by the delegates. We emerged out of this policy conference much wiser and better in our understanding of both our strengths and weaknesses. We have a keen understanding of our challenges and how to overcome them. But most importantly, we also emerge out of this conference more united in purpose than when we came here. We are much clearer and remain committed to the fact that unites us is more important than what divides us. There are no losses, there are no losers and winners among the delegates to this conference. The only winner is the African National Congress. We are a movement. We as the movement have shown a keen and a deep appreciation of the teachings of our forebears who taught us that unity is the rock upon which our movement was founded. What the conference has also confirmed is that the unity of the ANC is sacrosanct. So, wherever or whatever we do, we must ensure that we leave the ANC as united as we inherited it. This conference strengthened the culture of robust internal debate in the ANC, anchored on the principle that we can disagree without being disagreeable. After all, we are not enemies, we are comrades. Our discussions on the strategy and tactics and organizational renewal have once more reaffirmed our position as a liberation movement for the emancipation of Black people in general and Africans in particular, with a strong non-racial character. The ANC still lives up to the vision that our founding fathers, like Pixley Guy Zagasem, articulated when he said, and I quote, "We are one people," as well as the vision articulated in the Freedom Charter that, and I quote, "South Africa belongs to all who live in it, black and white, and that no government can justly claim authority unless it is based on the will of all the people," unquote. Our discussions and recommendations have also reaffirmed that the ANC is a broad church, a multi-class movement with a strong bias to the working class and the poor. The ANC is still a disciplined force of the left. These are core tenets and principles to which the ANC subscribes. Our conference has reaffirmed the strategy and tactics as adopted at the 53rd National Conference. This speaks to the continuity and consistency of our policies. The organizational renewal discussion, in which all delegates participated, looked at our challenges and weaknesses and came with many proposals to address them. Most importantly, we have clear proposals for improving our connection with our people on the ground and for accelerating the delivery of services to our people. All our members, leaders, and public representatives will focus on re-establishing the trust and confidence the people have always had in the ANC to be their servant and to deliver a better life for all. We have many strong recommendations for cleaning up and decisively dealing with corruption in government and within our movement. We agree that we will strengthen cadre development as well as the selection criteria and election processes to ensure that we produce the best possible leaders among us to take the national democratic revolution forward. We will strengthen our discipline, our integrity commission, and our ability to monitor delivery of our processes and promises to the people and effective implementation of our policies. There was general agreement in commissions on the need to elect leaders according to the principles of integrity, discipline, honesty, trustworthiness, service to the people, track record, capacity, and hard work. In the spirit of combating slate politics and factionalism, a significant number of comrades have proposed that we find a mature and sound way of politically managing possible contestation of leadership positions, especially in the run-up to the national conference at all material times. On this one, comrades, I would love to take a bit of time to persuade the delegates that have been persuaded already and be like a commissar who can even veto the commander. The experiences of our past conferences have taught us that the factionally driven winner-takes-all attitude is not in the best interest of the African National Congress. It is worth repeating what I said during the opening remarks to this conference, that our movement has lost many talented and capable comrades in whom it invested significantly due to slate politics, a terrible manifestation of perennial factionalism. In this regard, a proposal has been made in some of the commissions that we should all encourage lobbying practices that will allow a unifying electoral outcome. One of these is to build consensus in the structures of the ANC that candidates contesting for official positions should feature in the leadership collective, even if they lose. That's one view. Because these are comrades. You don't say because we have won to a candidate that we're supporting, then the rest are declared an enemy. Winner takes all. That's not good for the organization. It's not good also for individual comrades or collective comrades, because you are, in a sense, encouraging tensions within the organization. As a practical measure to put an end to the entrenched practice of slate politics and factionalism, branches should consider some proposals. And I want to talk to this proposal because I would like to persuade branches and leadership that we should be able to go back and discuss this issue. What has made me to feel I should do what I did in the commission is because I think all of us feel very strongly that factions are not good for the ANC and therefore not good for our country. I think the challenge that faces us is how could we get rid of the factions? What is the remedy? It is clear that we need to find a remedy. I can say, we discuss this in different levels and say, you know, slate politics, gatekeeping, what, we don't want. But some attend those meetings when they've got an appointment to attend a factional meeting after the meeting where they are criticizing the functions. That's dishonesty. We pay lip service to a practice that is eroding the very existence of the African National Congress. And we need to apply our minds to this issue. We can't not do so. We have to. You know, if we look at our history, very strong feeling about my candidate, etc., so strong that they are above the strong feeling towards the ANC, can't be right. Can't be right. The experience of Polokwane saw a very good crop of leadership moving out and forming an organization. And of course, if we think about ourselves, we might think it was the right thing. But if we think about the ANC must grow all the time. It must not go down. And because we so disagreed that we began to have very hardened kind of attitude. And I can go on and on. In fact, if you realize, quite a number of opposition parties are the snippets that comes out of the ANC, or pieces, because they're small. Even if they go out with some number, it would shrink. Particularly because our problem has never been ideological. It tends to be personal, it tends to be friendly, it tends to be interest-driven, and therefore that is not helping the ANC. And I want to persuade the membership and everybody that we should find a solution, and that the proposal that I think has been discussed in some commissions, perhaps not concluded. I think in one report, the report is there of options. I think we need to have one specific idea. What do we think we need to do? Of course, we could look at the options. I believe we need to get rid of the factions. And how to get rid of the factions? This is a proposal. That you must go and discuss. Partly because, just to talk a bit about factions, they have become so deep. If bengizibeka ngesizulu bengathi seyikhulile sezinempandla nempunga asasipuleki. We almost have a situation where it looks like two organizations exist in one. It can't be right. In order to deal with this, if at all, comrades, after looking at the programs, etc., and feel that this particular comrade can lead us, and others feel another one can lead us, and therefore there's a contestation, in order to maintain the understanding and comradeship, at the end, when one wins, let us not then say those who are opposing out, nobody comes in. In other words, the slate politics. Because what does that do? It means those comrades who are defeated, as they are defeated, they start working, plotting, working hard, raising money in order to destabilize those who won. And the whole 5 years, there is a war that is silent. And that destabilizes the African National Congress. We need a stable ANC, a united ANC, that does not contribute to that. And I would really love, comrades, to discuss this until December, so that in December we can take a decision. Do we want the ANC that is perpetually destabilized, fighting among itself? I don't think so. We want a stable ANC, united ANC, the ANC that must take South Africa forward. For us to succeed, we need to get rid of the factions. How? That's a good question. If we have two, what is it? Huh? Okay. And one of the comrades wins. Let us not get rid of the one who did not win. Let us make the one who became number 2 or who did not win to be a deputy of the one who is leading. This will have the effect that both factions will come together and work together on the 2 leaders that they wanted to lead the organization. In other words, we move away from where we say if these comrades have lost, all of them out. and they get angry and they fight against those who've won is a destructive system. Doesn't help the ANC. But if we put them together, all the comrades who have been leading, others have won more, others have won as well. Nobody has lost. And even when you begin to deploy these, both sides would be taken into consideration and will work together. Of course, the question could be asked that if that is the case, what happens to the right of the delegate, the branches, who constitutionally have a right to nominate a deputy president? Besides these two, what happens? I think for the sake of our unity, for the sake of the organization, we need to amend the ANC constitution on one factor. The comrade who was nominated to become the deputy, when he wins, he becomes the number 2 deputy. Yebo. Unless you change the constitution radically to get rid of the nomination of a deputy president. Otherwise, in order to accommodate that, you can come with any formula. And 2 deputy presidents is not like out of the way. It's a very practical thing. Even the workload, because you then accommodate everything, but you would have united the ANC. This is an option. You can discuss any other option. If you agree with this formula, how then do we accommodate what is in the structures today? This is said you must go and discuss. The fact of the matter, you can't say the constitution can't be changed. You can destroy the ANC without tweaking the constitution in order to accommodate a system that is going to help the ANC unite and move forward. But you can have whatever formula that you want to have. The fact of the matter, this is a remedy to kill factions in the ANC. These are proposals to be taken to the branches. You debate them, you find the best formula, we finalize it in 6 months' time in the national conference. Even if we don't apply it in the conference in December, we apply it in the conferences thereafter. I have no problem. As long as we take a clear resolution that is going to help heal the tensions within the movement. It's absolutely crucial. We can't stay with permanent factions and tensions within the organization that is expected to unite South Africa, to take South Africa forward. Is a contradiction in terms. And I trust that you will consider this very seriously. Because even if you can have denialism about it, but it's the reality. Comrades begin to hate other comrades. I'm not going to other details, which I can go if we did not have our guests. I would have gone into some details. What it has caused the organization. I'm just leaving it at this superficial level so that we don't have rather exciting headlines. But you understand what I mean. You understand what I mean. If need be, I can go from province to province to motivate this proposal. I'm ready to do so, because I believe it is correct. And therefore, branches should consider this proposal to have a second deputy president so as to include the candidate who obtained the second highest votes in the contest for the position of president. In other words, even if 3 or 6 comrades contest for the presidency, number 1 becomes the president, number 2 in terms of numbers becomes the deputy. Sayitholi solution. Salitholi ikhambi. The remedy. The remedy. There is consensus that our movement can no longer afford to totally reject leaders who were preferred by a significant number of members to lead. You will remember in Polokwane, those who won had 60%, those who lost had 40%. And Congress said, consider the 40% is a significant number. But because we had no formula, no remedy, part of the 40% emerged as an organization, let alone that the organization is almost disappearing, partly because it's difficult to be outside of the ANC. Comrades, I'm happy that I've raised this point, particularly in the plenary, because I think we need to find a solution to our problem. It does not, in other words, this does not remove lobbying or whatever, but the lobbying will be very comradely. And people would not lobby as if there is no tomorrow. And they will not plot against others, because they will know, no matter who wins, this is our organization, we remain within our organization, and we'll be part of it. Comrades, important proposals have emerged for strengthening the National Executive Committee by making it smaller, while at the same time strengthening the full-time capacity at the head office. There are options to be considered by the National Conference for more deputy secretaries general and additional deputy president and more directly elected full-time NEC members to manage the day-to-day work of the organization in policy, political education, elections, organizing, and communications. A strong recommendation came out of this conference on the need to have monitoring and evaluation capacity located either within the office of the Deputy President or the Deputy Secretary General. Again, I want to spend a few minutes on this proposal. Comrades will all agree that we have our wonderful policies and programs and indeed resolutions. We all complain that we are weak on implementation. We always do this. We have actually taken this decision before to say we need a performance monitoring and evaluation unit. This time around, I think, from now to December, let us work on this. How should this particular entity look like? Who must lead it? What type of personnel must be part of it? And it must work almost on a full-time basis. And it must report 4 times a year. In other words, each time the NEC meets, this unit must report how far we've gone in implementing resolutions programs. And it must coordinate with that unit that is in government. Because the ANC has its government. It must get reports on a regular basis. How is government performing? And therefore that unit will help inform this one so that the NEC is aware of the political implementation of our decisions as well as government. Critical to have this. We can no longer take this decision and leave it hanging. We need to construct it, put it in place, man it, or what if one will say man it is old English, personify it or something. The point I'm making is a critical recommendation that if we implement it, I can tell you the issue of implementation will be addressed. This proposal is informed by the challenge of implementation that we have observed over the years. Comrades, our branches must go back and discuss the type of structure and define its power, functions, and composition of the structure. This unit must liaise with the Planning, Monitoring, and Evaluation Department in government. This unit must be fully capacitated and must report at every ANC meeting about its monitoring and evaluation work. In other words, we shouldn't say there are no resources for this. If there are resources in somewhere else, let us take them and prefer to give this one, because it is important. We have taken many resolutions on many key and critical issues, but because we have weak capacity to monitor and evaluate their implementations, we have been found wanting. An effective monitoring and evaluation unit located at the head office is central to the ANC's position as the strategic center of power. We still do not have such a unit capacitated at a desired level, and this has resulted in the inability of the ANC to ensure the full implementation of its program of action. We have just something of in the presidency there, trying to resemble this, but it's weak, not capacitated. We're trying to implement the decision, but because it was not a decision enforced in the manner in which we are saying it should, you have people who can't even go to provinces and interact with comrades, etc. So it's absolutely important. In other words, this reality means that the capacity of our movement to enforce discipline on and ensure accountability from its deployed cadres is severely limited. Many commissions have decried the failure to implement some of our resolutions and have attributed this failure to the lack of monitoring and evaluation capacity, which has undermined the mandates received at various conferences. Comrades, the discussions in the strategy and tactics and organizational renewal and the economic transformation commissions and at plenary were robust on the issue of the characterization of monopoly capital. This is, as it should be, a debate by the members of the ANC on critical issues. The correct characterization of phenomenon is important. In this regard, it is technically correct in the context of the South African political economy to talk of white monopoly capital. With this understanding in mind, it is also important to lay the emphasis on the fact that it is monopoly capital as such that is the primary adversary of the collective interests of our people, regardless of its color. The most critical thing, comrades, is that we share a common view about about what measures we need to take to realize our ultimate objectives. We must not allow ourselves to be divided simply on the basis of conceptualization and grand theory. I want to reiterate that our definition of radical socio-economic transformation captures the essence of what we aim to achieve in terms of fundamentally changing the structure, systems, institutions, and patterns of ownership and control of the economy of the country, and making it inclusive of the poor and working class, most of whom are African and female. In fact, we agree that many of the measures we are already taking through the NDP, including reindustrialization and regional integration, are critical in this regard. One of the important factors that we need always to take into consideration, even if we look at the world where where the system is the same, South Africa has a peculiar history. And you cannot, if you describe the system in this country, not take that into account. Many colonial countries only had administrators. And when freedom came, administrators packed their bags and went back to what we used to be called the mother country. In South Africa, it's the only country that I know that had a huge number of settlers who came to stay and therefore created very special conditions, different from others. Now, you can't define South Africa the same if we are talking about South Africa. While you could generalize on other issues, but when it comes to us, you have to take that into account. And therefore, that definition of the monopoly capital in South Africa, I think this conference has added more elements to make it even more understood. What is at issue is accelerating and deepening these interventions. We are agreed that these measures include legislation and regulations, licensing conditions, public procurement, financial and other support, and the reorientation of the mandate of development finance institutions. We agree on the imperative to accelerate land redistribution and land reform. Again, we had robust discussions on the modalities of achieving this. We agree that using the focus for land redistribution must be accompanied by other measures if we are to achieve the goal at the required pace. Where it is necessary and unavoidable, this may include expropriation without compensation within the law, within the Constitution. The Constitution provides for legislative changes to be effected in the democratic process. Democracy is about agreeing on things, is about a system that there are no dictators. Things are discussed either in parliament or whatever forum until you reach an agreement. Once an agreement is reached, that becomes your policy. It does not say in democracies you cannot amend the laws. No, you cannot amend the fundamental law, the Constitution. It is how you do it. In other countries, dictators would say, here there must be the sea and the sea will be there. Like what happened at the beginning. But in democracies, you discuss. If you feel there is a clause to be changed in order to achieve what our people need, democratically you introduce it to be discussed in parliament and see where you go. That is the democratic system. What would be wrong is to say because the land was taken, let us take it. Bafuna ukuboshwa lapho. Because baphula umthetho. But we have got to discuss. If we don't agree, the majority prevails. That's why when it comes not to other laws, it's simple majority, but when it comes to the Constitution, 2/3. Because it's a serious matter. You can't say you can't go to 2/3 because you have a view that this thing must not be done. As long as it is within the rules of democracy, why can't you do it within what is accepted? So it is absolutely important that we should reach that time. You can't. We're now 23 years. You can't have 50 years. We are still complaining when we had time to deal with the matters. And it must be understood it is there to help build this new nation, the Rainbow Nation. Comrades, before we conclude, we wish to reiterate the policy of the ANC in regard to free education for the poor. As I indicated in the opening remarks, we await the report of the HEHA Commission on modalities for the implementation of free higher education. As the ANC, we are resolute that no child from working class and poor backgrounds will be denied access to education in general and higher education in particular. In conclusion, delegates to this conference expressed serious concern about the state of our alliance. They emphasized the importance of the alliance and agreed that we must do everything in our power to jealously guard the unity of the alliance. As we leave this conference, all of us must double our efforts to strengthen relations with our allies from the ground upward. We also call on our alliance partners to engage us constructively at correct platforms. That is important. It cannot be right to engage one another on wrong platforms. It's not helping the alliance. That's one of the sickness we needed to cure. But we are in the process of doing so. Comrades, on behalf of the National Executive Committee, I must thank you. You have conducted yourself in a manner that we are very happy. The discipline was felt. I'm sure it was for the first time that you had one delegate who had done something coming here to say, I apologize. We hadn't done it in the past. I think that indicates the seriousness about discipline in the organization. But you were sitting here engaging on the issues. The discussions were not about howling and making noise, were about the content. You enriched the documents, you enriched the debate. And I'm sure you have represented your branches very well. Would like to thank you very much. Would like to encourage you to do the same always, and do the same in December as well. But go back and debate the issues. You must know, of all political parties put together, and I'm sure Bazot, ANC arrogant, of all political parties put together, we have a heavier responsibility. We are governing the country. As an ANC, we therefore have to act responsibly, with dignity, with discipline. We have to take South Africa to prosperity. And we have the capacity and foresight to do so. I must also thank our friends, the media. Indeed, you reported about this conference. This time around, to a very fair degree, not so. Huh? I must thank you when you do very well. You were very friendly. You were not like, harassing, etc. And I think you also met people who were ready to cooperate with you. So thank you very much for what we have done. We thank you as a media. We are happy that you came in your numbers. 1,600. Unprecedented. Very important for the country and the world to know what is ANC doing in South Africa. And you have conveyed that. Thank you very much. May you keep that good culture of reporting properly. Thank you very much indeed to Sianbong Rialeboha. Bayadangi. Comrades, we wish all delegates a safe journey as they go back to their different destinations. Go well. Samayani handle nihambe kahle bakwethu. Thank you. Oliver Tambo hawulale ngoxolo. Oliver Tambo hawulale ngoxolo wena. Okudala uzabalaza. Okudala uzabalaza. wemfoka thambo awulale ngoxolo obudala uzabalaza obudala uzabalaza uzabalaza amanza awethu ohinde lendlela esihambayo ohinde lendlela esihamba ohinde lendlela esihambayo ohinde lendlela esihamba washumandela kubalandeli bakhe wathi sohlangana nge-free washumandela kubalandeli bakhe wathi sohlangana nge-free hinde lendlela esihambayo hinde lendlela esihambayo hinde lendlela esihambayo hinde lendlela esihamba washumandela kubalandeli bakhe wathi sohlangana nge-free washumandela kubalandeli bakhe wathi sohlangana nge-freedom day. Thank you very much.
President Jacob Zuma there in full song as he closes the 5th ANC National Policy Conference. Having spoken about a few issues that are very critical and that were crucially and robustly debated here at the policy conference. It is, of course, Wednesday today, the 5th of July, which means the end of the 6-day conference. President Jacob Zuma there in his closing address, speaking of the issue of two deputy presidents, at least for the leadership of the ANC, saying that the two out of the two people who will contest for the position of president, the loser in that battle must automatically become the deputy president of the ANC. I'm taking a look now at just what's currently taking place inside there. Delegates obviously coming out, starting to stream out of the plenary hall. It's been a long week for them, a long 6 days. Many of them sat in plenaries, sat in commissions that lasted for several hours. Very robust, the discussions that took place there. We heard from several sources telling us just how tough the discussions were inside of those commissions. And now let me take you a little bit back to what the president also touched on. So other than the issue of the two deputy presidents for the ANC, the president, Jacob Zuma, believes that that will be a crucial aspect in the party trying to deal and successively eliminate the issue of factionalism within the party. The president then also spoke about the issue of the characterization of white monopoly capital yesterday. Joel Nachitenza had said that the ANC, wants to do away with the word white in monopoly capital, but the president saying that in understanding South Africa's political history, it is, I suppose, correct to characterize it as white monopoly capital, but that monopoly capital, whether it is white or black in color, is something that the ANC is completely against, just completely against monopoly capital. The president then also urged delegates to go back and discuss some of the issues that were mentioned in this conference. Lastly, he urged delegates to try, or for the ANC at least, to try and strengthen relations with the alliance partners. We know that in the lead up to this policy conference, COSATU had expressed itself against the ANC and against some of the issues that are taking place in the ANC. The South African Communist Party was also quite vocal and very critical of the issues that are taking place within the ANC. So President Jacob Zuma there urging members and delegates here to go back, and in the lead up to the national conference that's taking place in December, that for the members to go back and try to strengthen relations with the alliance partners, saying that that relationship is quite key. A little bit later on, we expect that my colleague Griselda Lewis will do an interview with the Secretary General of the ANC, Mr. Gwede Mantashe, just to wrap everything, and then we also Eldrin Sampear will package the president's speech, and then a little bit later on I'll speak to Susan Boyson to give us just her take as an analyst from everything that has taken place over the last 6 days. But for the time being, from us in Nasrec, we'll cross you back to studio, and then when you come back, we hope to have Griselda Lewis standing by with the ANC Secretary General Gwede Mantashe. For the time being, it's back to you guys in studio.
All right, thank you very much. Lukanyo Kalata coming to you live from Nasrec, and he summed it up and talking about the president and the issues that he raised. And you know, when we go straight to the issues that he was raising, I have a guest with me in the studio. It's the Professor of Humanities at the University of Johannesburg, that is Professor Stephen Friedman, who will talk to us through some of the issues that were raised. Let me start with this one. As I was talking to you when we were listening to the president, he alluded to the fact that we must leave the ANC that is united as we have found it. Now, when he talks about the branches having to consider some issues that would have a unifying electoral outcome, we discussed the issue of leadership and the runner-up. What is your view about what he's suggesting regarding changing the constitution of the ANC?
Colin, it became clear at this conference that although it was widely expected that the ANC was going to go to the elective conference at the end of the year, that there'd be a massive battle between the two candidates and their factions. There is now a very serious attempt to prevent that happening. There's a very serious attempt to cobble out some sort of compromise so that the ANC is not torn apart. And the reason for that, quite simply, is that a lot of people within the ANC on both sides believe that if you go to that conference and one side just beats the other, then the ANC will split again. And the ANC would be very unlikely to win the next election if it splits again. Yeah, you were talking about the issue of perennial factionalism, and when he talked about the branches having to consider this issue, you had the response. Did you get the impression that it was a mixed reaction? Yes, it is a mixed reaction, because you see, the point is that there's an attempt to work out this compromise. But is the compromise acceptable to both sides? Is the compromise acceptable to the membership? Let's take this example you mentioned, this idea that the loser should be the deputy president. Is that going to be seen by ANC delegates as an attempt to create unity, or is it going to be seen by quite a lot of ANC delegates as a sign that the faction which is losing wants to hang on to the deputy presidency because they won't get the presidency? So there's a lot of work they're going to have to do if they want to achieve that unity, because you're entirely correct. It's one thing to talk about changing the constitution, but if your delegates at the conference are still divided into factions, then you have a lot of work to do if you're going to try and achieve that.
There was the issue of what happens to number 3.
Well, that is also the issue. You see, people have been making the point. If you only have 2 candidates, it works. If you have 3 candidates, what do you do? I suppose one thing you can say is, well, the 3rd candidate then drops off. But then that creates all the factional problems you were talking about. So one really wonders whether this is the solution. I mean, the solution really is for the 2 factions to get together and hammer out some sort of compromise if unity is what they want. What we then need to ask is, if they achieve that unity, is that going to be acceptable to voters in 2019, because that's not necessarily so.
But then when we take a bird's eye view of this conference, how is the ANC coming out of it? Do we see a united ANC? Do you see some perspectives being sharpened in going forward? Because when the president is talking about the issue of the ANC being weak at implementation and reviewing, monitoring and evaluation. I was telling you earlier that, but we heard monitoring and evaluation during the likes of the late Collins Chabani, as well as former Minister of Finance, Trevor Manuel, and that didn't work out. Hence, that's where we are here now, because of how the National Development Plan didn't work out as expected.
You see, the answer to that will be, it's a very good point, but the answer to that will be, well, Manuel Shabane and now Jeff Khadebe are there in government. They're not in the ANC. This will be an ANC structure. It will be a Luthuli House structure, and that will make it easier to achieve that. But one has to ask questions about that, because the reason monitoring and evaluation hasn't been successful is that government departments usually see it as a police force, so they try to avoid it. Now, if that's the case with government departments, if it's sitting in the presidency, does it mean that if you move it to Luthuli House, that changes that? And you've also got to ask the other obvious question, which is, what are you monitoring? Because the ANC might be the governing party, but the government serves all of South Africa. The government is for all South Africans. So you must be very careful not to confuse the ANC with the government. The ANC may be the governing party, but there are still many South Africans who are not ANC members who the government serves. So that is a danger of trying to concentrate implementation in the ANC headquarters instead of in government.
Right. So we talked about how the ANC is coming out of this conference. Let's mention the second aspect now. Is the organization really genuinely admitting its credibility deficit in as far as the perceptions of the ANC regarding the challenges that they have? Spanning from last year during the local government elections, you know what happened with the metros, and going forward, the way the ANC is perceived now in terms of, number one, its leadership and how it's performing in government, and the state of the economy, given that we are in, a technical recession, the issue of being in a junk status. For somebody who's looking at the ANC now and saying, should I give the ANC a chance, or are we having some electoral implications come 2018? We're going to have a different playing ground as far as choices are concerned for members of the public.
Look, the reality, as we know, is that there are a lot of voters who did support the ANC in the past who are unhappy, who probably stayed at home in the last local government elections. Your question is obviously, how will they react? My sense is that as we talk this afternoon, their mind is not going to be changed. They're not going to be any happier with the ANC than they were. Because what has actually come out of this, what they were concerned about in the main, I mean, different people were concerned about different things, but in the main, people were concerned that the ANC was too concerned about itself. It wasn't concerned about citizens enough. It wasn't serving people effectively. There was too much corruption, etc. Now, nothing that's come out of the conference has really dealt with that. Yes, there have been some proposals, but I think a lot of voters will look at this and say, look, they're still talking about themselves, they're not talking about me. What will change that is that if some of these decisions which have been taken are actually implemented effectively between now and the next election, if they're able to show that they are serious about corruption, if they're able to show that they are serious about serving voters instead of serving themselves, then they could change that around. But right now, I think the perception will be that they spent a week talking about themselves and each other, and they didn't spend enough time talking about voters.
But as you and I are talking now, when we have to bring the ANC's policy conference closer to home, there are people who are living in municipalities, and the president talked about service delivery protests that even though people are damaging properties, burning libraries and so forth, we shouldn't actually just leave it at that. People who do that must be punished. The law must take its course. But the ANC must consider that there's a voice of the people that is saying, we are not happy with service delivery at local government, and the ANC needs to do something about that. What do you make out of that statement?
No, I think it's a very important issue, but I mean, some of us have been arguing, I've been arguing for me, that the only way you can change that is that you have to listen more effectively. It's no good just putting a few more technical people in local government if they're not listening to what voters are saying. So that gets back to what I was saying earlier. What came out of this conference to show that the ANC is now going to listen to voters on the ground want, particularly voters in underserved areas, townships, shack settlements. Is the ANC going to go out there and actually listen carefully to what people there want and try to give it to them? Because if that doesn't happen, then the dissatisfaction continues.
Okay, let's talk about what's happening in the periphery now. Something of great concern. Since Friday, we've been having offices of some key leaders in provinces. The office of Gauteng Premier David Makula being burned, the office in the Eastern Cape also of the Premier there being burned. And today we hear of the offices of the Hawks having experienced a break-in and some computers being taken there. What do you make out of this? Is there something that we should suspect?
Well, obviously we must be worried about this. I mean, it indicates that some people are trying to fight political battles violently. I mean, this is not the first incident. We had the break-in at the Chief Justice's offices. This has become a worrying trend. And I think what we need to look for is as you said earlier, in relation to other sorts of violence. The real test is, are the people who did this going to be caught, and is it going to be stopped? Because if this continues, we're in a very worrying situation in this country, because then you're in a situation where you start worrying that people in public office, if somebody doesn't like them, are going to be subject to illegal and violent behavior. So there's a very important challenge for the police here to actually sort this out.
Let's talk about the issue that has been on the lips of most people when they talk about the leaked emails and the Gupta family saga. What do you make out of this? Because the policy conference is one thing, but as they disperse now out of Nasrec, going back to government, they're going to work, nothing wouldn't have changed in as far as the status quo is concerned regarding the state of SOEs, the issue of sentiments and business confidence, and South Africa having to create a platform where we attract FDI as much as possible so that we can get out of the current technical recession and a build-up towards how the country gets itself out of junk status rating by ratings agencies. Now, how would you suggest that the ANC go forward in as far as that is concerned?
Well, if the ANC wants to deal with this issue, it has got to tackle this question of state capture, in the sense that citizens have to be sure that the decisions government takes are taken because that's what government thinks that voters want, not what rich people want. It has to be clear that decisions taken in the public enterprises, the state-owned enterprises, which are crucial to this, are there to serve South Africans and are not there to serve special interests. So there's a tremendous task there. What is happening within the ANC and with government on this at the moment is what I call trench warfare. There's a battle about there's a battle about Eskom at the moment. There could be a battle against about Denel, about Telkom, etc. I mean, the SABC itself has been subject to a battle. I think what is signalled at this stage is that those battles will continue. Right now, the momentum seems to be with the, if you like, the anti-state capture group, because you've had people who were not in that position beforehand coming out and saying, look, this state capture is acceptable. But obviously the other group is going to fight back. So I think what we're looking at for the next few months is once again a battle. What does seem to be becoming very interesting is that the new Minister of Finance, Mr. Gigaba, although it was widely speculated that he would be closer to the state capture group, is finding himself in a position where he's having to take a very firm stance against them. And making clear that we need to signal to South Africans and to the world that public finance in South Africa is for the people of South Africa.
Okay.
And that may be very important going forward.
Okay, what we have seen now is something of a development, step by step. If the ANC gets into a national policy conference and reflect honestly and debate robustly the challenges that are overwhelming the organization, going forward, what should change in terms of the cadres who have been deployed to different and various government departments and SOEs and so forth? And what should happen regarding cautionary elements that have to do with a build-up towards the national elections? Because when you talk to other analysts, I haven't asked you before about what your viewpoint is, how the elections will play out in 2018, given that we have an ANC that is talking about a succession debate. And you're talking about Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma as well as Cyril Ramaphosa. Now, going forward, how would the organization then approach this so that we don't find ourselves debating whether or not the ANC is going to struggle to get a two-thirds majority, or we're going to have impetus for opposition parties to gain momentum and have more power and unity in parliament so that they can deal with issues of debate and voting?
Well, I think there are two things here. The first one is between now and the end of this year, one has to be quite frank about it, you're not going to see massive change. And the reason you're not going to see massive change is that this battle is going to continue. We must always remember that the ANC policy conference doesn't actually take decisions. It sets the agenda for the end of the year conference, and that's all they've done here. If you were listening to the President's talk, there are quite clearly issues here, big issues, which are not settled yet and are going to have to be settled there. Going forward from there, what the ANC's prospects in 2019 are going to depend very much on what it does in 2018 and the first half of 2019. Because whoever wins the ANC presidency at the end of this year is going to have to spend 2018 persuading a lot of voters who dumped the ANC in 2016 that they should return. And if that president fails to do that, then we're looking at the very likely prospect of no party getting 50% in the 2019 election. So whether it's, of course, either Dlamini Zuma, Cyril Ramaphosa or somebody else, that person is going to have to work with the leadership team to convince South Africans who are unhappy with the ANC that they should return. And that is going to be really the test of what happens in 2019.
What do you make of somebody who is standing outside, say, for example, the perspective of opposition parties who are looking forward to punch holes in the achievements of the ANC as they come out of this conference? Well,
the interesting reality of our politics is that although opposition parties have benefited from the changes within the ANC and from the changes in the election results, the story of South African elections is still the story of the ANC. And that is because, as I said earlier, the people who stayed at home in the last elections didn't cross to the EFF or the DA. They are still potential ANC voters. So it's less a question of what the opposition does in the next year, it's a question of what the ANC does.
All right. Well, at the moment, let's just nip it there. As Lucanio Calata mentioned earlier, there's a possibility of a press conference in Nasrec now, and I'm told